choir to debate to theater. SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Senate taxation will come back to order. We left off with Senate Bill 241. We had just finished testimony and rebuttal, and we will open up now with committee questions on Senate Bill 241. Senator Hulse.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Crabtree for letting me borrow your microphone. I appreciate the opportunity to ask some questions. So I was told at one point, somebody was lobbying me on this bill, and they said that not every county is mentioned in the list that's supposed to be mentioned or something. Can someone from Department of Revenue talk about that?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Doug Schinkel, Department of Revenue. So the question, again, just to make sure I understand the question, was not all of the counties are included in the reporting. Or I want to make sure I get the right question. Sorry.
Senator Hulse,
Chair.
go ahead.
Yeah, someone had told me, I think from the Department of Revenue, that the list of counties in the bill is not inclusive of all the counties that should be reporting this information.
Okay, Madam Chair. Again, Doug Schinkel. And the
Can
answer
you speak
to that.
closer to the mic so we
Sorry?
can hear better? Thank you.
Yes, the answer to that is obviously there's 66 counties in the state, but there's only 20 that are listed here specifically in this particular bill, and not all of the counties are listed in the Indian Territory, Indian Country, those sorts of things. So it's why this specific number of or list of counties was put in the bill. I don't know.
Follow up, Senator Hulse. Okay. Further questions from the committee? Senator Blanc.
Since Mr. Schenkel is up there, I'll ask a quick question. I have learned that DOR usually does a pretty good job of doing their research, and it sounded like from the proponent testimony that for whatever reason they don't feel like they're getting the either the cooperation or the answers that they've requested. Is it your understanding that you have done everything in your power to communicate what they're to get answers for the questions that it sounds like they still have?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Doug Schinkel again. We take our relationships with all Indian tribes very seriously. We do everything in our power to ensure that all of the taxes that are due to the tribe are included in the agreements and are paid out to the tribes in a timely fashion. And as I mentioned, when we do pay the tribes the monies from the tax collection agreements, we share tons and tons and tons of information, including who those taxpayers are, the amount of receipts that they're reporting into those particular areas. So the answer is, yeah, we try to do everything in possible to provide this information to the tribal governments. That said, I also have staff who are available at any time. If they want to reach out and ask questions of us, we're here. We will answer these questions. And during collection or agreement negotiations, that's the time when we should really be having these discussions and answering questions and having these back and forths. So yeah, I think we do everything in our power to provide as much information to the tribes as we possibly can, and we're always available, ready to answer questions when they reach out to us.
Madam Chair?
Yes, follow-up, Senator.
Thank you for that. Can you put the... Not sure this is a fair question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Putting yourself in their shoes, apparently they don't feel like they're getting the answers that they want, even though I'm hearing you say that you're willing to sit. How often do you meet with them to discuss these kinds of issues? And if that isn't happening, what can be done in the future to make just to make that an ongoing? I mean, do you meet only when they have questions, or do you have a regular, like quarterly or a couple times a year? Can you fill us in? Because I'm just not aware.
Madam Chair? So, as a general rule, the negotiations take place close to the expiration of an agreement. Agreements can last for 5 years, and now actually up to 10 years. That was something just passed just recently. So typically, that's when we're going to have the heart of and the major negotiations and discussions with the tribes. But as I said, we're willing to talk anytime. We're willing to have discussions anytime. Is there a regular quarterly or annual meeting or anything of that nature? No, there's not. But we're there and available. Give us a call. Let's talk. That's what we want to do. We want to keep the lines of communication open.
Madam Chair?
Follow-up, Senator Blanc.
Thank you. When was the last time that you met with them?
Madam Chair? Difficult to answer because we have different communications and different contacts with each of the different tribes at different times. So as far as when we had the last sit down with a tribe, it's probably been over a year ago, and that was with negotiations for one of the agreements. But again, we're there.
No.
Further questions from the committee? Senator Hone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This would be for Mr. Bell.
Madam Chair, Ross Garlick Bell, representing Rosebud and Crow Creek.
Go ahead, Senator Hone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're finding out when you meet, it was stated that the best way to do this is through the compact negotiations. Do you agree with that or not?
No, I'm not involved in the compact negotiations directly. That's different teams. But the information is needed whether you're in the compact or not. The problem is you have some tribes that don't have a compact. So if there's no compact, you can't collect on there. Chairman Gorneau's online. So Lower Brule doesn't have a compact, which means they don't meet with the Department of Revenue on the compact negotiation because they don't want to do a compact. And they're not required to. They're a sovereign federal nation. So if the state is collecting taxes on sovereign federal territory, that's a big violation. And what we're finding is that that's happening. That's what you saw that tax bill. The state is collecting on citizens that they're not allowed to collect on. That's a legal issue. And so when the compacts are brought up, and they are negotiated at different times. So if you look, and the Department of Revenue will share the compact agreements. He's been very open about sharing that information. The compacts are 5-10 years, depending on each tribe and what they negotiate, and the information that's provided at the time. What's not being provided is this kind of breakdown, and what happened after the Wayfair special session was not provided, where their tribes were told, again, I believe it was under Dugard did the special session, and then you had a different administration, which is why legislation is kind of important. For tribes, consistency, it matters with the state and the relationship. And if it keeps changing administration to administration of what information they get, how it's interpreted, it makes a 5-year or 10-year compact really difficult. And going back to the table without having the data makes it difficult to negotiate. So what the tribes are requesting here is just some transparency. Like we said, COVID changed the game for online sales. We all know that. And for their communities, that meant there was a lot more sales activity happening on tribal lands instead of outside, which is kind of the standard in any rural community. You drive to Rapid City, you're paying in Walmart. So the information is not being, what I'm told from the Rosebud Department of Revenue, what they get from DORs is a list of all the companies and stuff, but it's not breaking it down in a way that makes it extremely clear where the money's coming from. And then regarding the counties on that list, those are counties that tribal land is in. That's what the tribes listed. So it's relevant to what we're asking for. You didn't need to do it statewide because it's not relevant to all the counties statewide, relevant to the areas in which they have citizens. So this would be very helpful for the tribes and the state, instead of doing what they're doing now, which is lump sum payments based on a formula kind of agreement that's saying this is the amount for 2022, this is the amount for 2023, 24, and through the rest of the contract. It would be based, they could work on something that's actual data of where that money is being collected and how much is coming in. It could be higher, it could be lower. So that's where the argument is, and that's where we're kind of surprised that the data is not being collected right now just for general purposes for the state of what's coming in remote, what's coming in sales. But we're also finding conflicts, like Amazon is not considered remote sales tax, but it's purchased online. So that gets really complicated all of a sudden when you've changed how, because they have a facility that they don't fall under the remote area, even though their whole business model is online. You don't go to an Amazon, unless it's Amazon Fresh, but you don't go to an Amazon store and buy. So I hope that answers the question, Senator, and gets you what you're looking for.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can you enlighten me about how much you've tried to communicate with Department of Revenue prior to this legislation request?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Senator, this has been a bill that's been a couple of years. So it was presented in the House last year before committee there with the understanding that there would be some changes. We contacted the Department of Revenue with an email with some questions on, for example, with Lower Brule, what are you doing there? And with collection, the responses are always vague because they're worried about legal ramifications, and understandably. One of the responses that came was if somebody is taxed on tribal land that doesn't have a compact, that they could contact the business and tell them that. Well, that gets pretty complicated to talk to Amazon and tell them they shouldn't be taxing you. And you have to now get all the proof in order to get the $20, the $5 tax off your bill when it shouldn't have been there in the first place. We thought that was not the answer to the solution. We also looked at how they do their coding. Is there a way to code for like a Lower Brule where there's no area? And there isn't. We also found out during the interim talks and emails with DOR that Yankton at the time was only the gas station and the casino is where online purchases happen, because that's all the compact area was, because they don't have the defined boundaries are in question. And of course, for Yankton, the casino during COVID was where they actually had people isolated. So it wasn't someplace that there's going to be a lot of commercial activity. So there has been communication. There's been some areas where there's been improvement. It's just there needs to be, again, consistency in looking for the data. And again, over the past year, nothing's really changed. It's kind of just been the same. So that's why the request was put in there. There is that bill on the House side that is kind of just looking at changing the code a little bit to put remote and state sales tax together, but it doesn't address the need to figure out what happened during COVID, and B, to make sure that the tribes that aren't supposed to be taxed, like Flanders and other area, where if you're taxing people on tribal land, that the state isn't accidentally collecting a lot of revenue that it's counting in its budget that they don't have a right to use. And that's the serious question for the committee.
The question was, when was your last communication?
Sorry.
Was that your question?
Or how much?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, has this been?
I'm sorry, I go in a little
Yeah.
too more detail, Senator Chair, so I'll end it there.
Okay.
Do you have another follow-up?
I do, if you could.
Succinctly.
Yes. It's saying that DOR cannot distinguish between remote and non-remote sellers and would not be able to create a report of degree of accuracy. Can you do a quick comment on that and maybe a follow-up if?
That may be more for DOR.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Kirsten Jasper, Counsel with the Department of Revenue. And really what this comes down to answer your question, is what is a remote seller? And a remote seller is not defined by law as online sales. Online sales are different. A remote seller is somebody who does not have what is called physical nexus with the state, meaning that they don't have like a person or a connection to the state that allows us the ability through the Dormant Commerce Clause to extend our taxability and make them collect the tax on behalf of the state. This is real. I'm trying to stay up here instead of get real down deep, which I can do quick. So with like Amazon, as he said, Amazon would not be considered a remote seller. They have a physical nexus with the state, so it would never have qualified as a remote seller, which is why we have the economic nexus, which is the statutes that came about after the Wayfair decision, which says if you have $100,000 in sales, that gives us nexus the ability to require you to collect the sales tax for us. The remote seller question is a very fact-specific question, and in order to determine that, we would have to ask sellers for information like, do you have an employee in the state? Do you pay an accountant? Is your accountant service in our state? Do you have an employee that drives to the state, may not live here, may not work here regularly, but comes here to do sales, or comes for a conference presentation, or different things like that that would make them have a physical nexus with the state. So it's a very legal intensive question and would take a lot of information for the retailers to provide to the department to make that determination on whether or not they are a remote seller. That is why we cannot collect that information, especially now that we have the economic nexus, because they could have economic nexus and still be a remote seller. But we don't ask that question in the applications. I tried to stay real high level. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Follow-up, Senator? Okay. Other committee questions? I have a couple questions for the sponsor, please. Real basic questions. What reports are the tribes currently getting, and what are you not getting that you want?
Madam Chair, Tamara Grove, District 26. I don't know that I can answer the report that they are getting, but I do know that what they want is just a total breakdown. And it sounds like they're saying it's kind of impossible to do. But they want the data, specifically starting with 2020, of the sales that were made where they were taxes occurred, where people were taxed.
So were you getting that information prior to 2020? Were you getting a breakdown?
It didn't exist before Wayfair.
Oh yeah, that's right. It didn't exist before Wayfair.
Okay. And then I think there was another question that was asked of one of the opponents related to the list of counties that was in the bill. Could you answer that question from your perspective as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the list was the list that the tribes gave where the people are living in those specific counties. So it's not, we don't need it for all of the counties in South Dakota. It's just where those enrolled members are living, and that's the counties that the tribe gave.
Okay. Thank you. If not, I'll open up to committee discussion and or action. Discussion on the part of the committee?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, it might be the afternoon committee hearing, but I guess I feel like this might be one of those situations where it's not time yet for a bill, and it's more time to have some more discussions to see if this can be done without something in statute. I guess I haven't heard anything today, and maybe I need to use my ears more than my mouth. I have two of them instead of my mouth, but it sounds like this could be resolved potentially over discussions with the department of how to get this information. It doesn't need to be forced by statute, but maybe I'm wrong there.
Madam Chair. I don't, I think that good conversation perhaps could help. I don't know if there, is a way to perhaps defer until, or, like put this off for a minute and allow some conversation to occur. But it just seems in the 21st century with AI and all the things that we have, it seems odd to me that we can't get some information and some breakdown so that the tribes can say this is where this is coming from and feel a little bit more comfortable with what they're getting. So I don't have a problem with holding off for a minute, but I would hate to kill the bill and then we just continue to do what we've been doing for, 6 years now.
From the committee?
Madam Chair.
Senator Blanc.
I also don't feel comfortable in just leaving this in limbo, because then both parties will just be back, probably with a similar bill and probably similar results. I think that the good senator has brought us to a point where maybe it's forced a discussion, a stronger discussion, or maybe that it's when a legislator brings a bill, it's usually not their first recourse of action, and at least the discussion is out there, and then maybe I'm not saying the DOR hasn't been cooperative. It sounds like they have, but maybe they could be more cooperative and more proactive in making time to meet. I don't understand the tribal dynamics, and I know that it's difficult to get all, is it 11 tribes? 9 tribes, that's what I said, 9 tribes? No, I said 11. All 9 tribes together at the same time. But my encouragement is to the Prime and to her supporters do their best to get as many of them together at one time. And then I believe that DOR would probably be willing to make the time as well. Probably take a few days, probably not going to handle this in an hour, but it's going to take a little time. And if the data is available, or maybe by asking some of the questions, I think the young lady that spoke last, she said that it's not on, we're not requesting this particular information from our remote sellers. Maybe that can be added to be able to give some of the additional information that would satisfy what the tribes are seeking. I'm also understanding that this is going back all the way to 2020 that you're requesting information for. I don't know if that's something that you can do, but at least we have a point where you can get together and start or restart a better conversation. So just my input. I don't know if someone on the dais wants to make a motion to defer. Is that what we're...
Is there further discussion or action?
Since, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Sorry. Since we're discussing, I want to make it clear that I'm not making this motion, but I would say another option would be to table the bill so that, that doesn't kill it, that just puts it in kind of a holding pattern. We could always later on decide to take it off the table and take it back up for consideration if you buy some time between, I think.
Well, for clarity, tabling kills it. It's like a 41st day motion. It's more severe than a 41st day motion by tabling it.
Madam Chair, but you can always make a motion to take a bill off a table.
You can make a motion to bring it back from the 41st day, too.
Correct.
Yes. Further discussion and/or action?
Madam Chair,
Yes. Senator Crabtree.
appreciate all the good discussion today. And certainly the heart of the senator who brought this and is trying to solve something in her home area. What I would say is, as we're nearing our time here, we have to, I think, get to the point where we're certain that something has to be put in statute before we move it along. We're getting pretty close to deadlines. And so at this time, I'd make a motion to defer to the 41st day.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Senator Crabtree, second by Senator Davis, to move Senate Bill 241 to the 41st day. Discussion on your motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I think a great job by the senator and the proponents for their discussion today. What I would say is just that we're at a spot where it seems like all of us are teetering on whether or not that this is something we want to move forward with at this point or not. When we look at the timelines that are here, I think that it's time to be decisive on those ones that we think have a chance right now. Now, I do think that the good news is that the senators brought a spotlight to this discussion, and that will certainly, I think, allow the good folks on both sides of this argument to continue working towards a resolution. But I think as far as us today, I don't think any of us are sold that we really must do this. And so for the sake of efficiency of this committee, that's why I made the motion.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Senator Grove.
Well, of course, I would say resist the motion to send to the 41st day. I think that we've seen this session alone. I know it's probably not the standard policy or procedure, but we have seen where when the Senate says we want to see some action, we want to see some movement on a thing, it tends to move things along. And so it would be good, in my mind, if we did that again. I understand that you say this might not be something that we would put into statute, but at some point it is probably how it's going to have to be once these agreements are made or conversations are had. So that I would just say to resist the motion and allow the bill to be deferred or whatever until some action can happen between the Department of Revenue and the tribes.
Further discussion? Senator Hulse.
I'm going to support the motion, and here's why. If after you have discussions with the Department of Revenue, you still feel that the piece of legislation is needed, we can always, as the chair said, take the bill off from the 41st day. We have one more meeting on Friday, so we could still take action on this bill before crossover day. So this still gives you time in the next couple of days to have some of these discussions, and we can determine, or not determine, if we need this piece of legislation. But I would say, having worked on tribal compacts when I was a law clerk in the governor's office and things, I think it is important to have discussions with the department before we put something into statute, into code.
Further discussion on the committee?
Madam Chair.
Senator Blanc.
Is there a possibility, Madam Chair, that you could share with us exactly what our options are as far as deferring? Is our only option to defer to the 41st day, or table it, which you said is basically the same thing or even worse than the 41st day? Because realistically, I don't know all of the Prime's schedule, but I doubt if she is going to be able to, in the next couple of days, be able to work out those discussions before crossover. So what are our options? Madam Chair.
The options are a motion to the 41st day, a motion to table, a motion to pass. You could make a motion to defer to a date certain, which would be Friday or Monday. We only have 2 committee meetings left. Or we could send it to the floor with no recommendation.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to defer to the 41st day. So I will just say that no matter how this turns out, I do think it's something that needs attention, and I would strongly suggest that both the tribes and the department get together and make sure that each understands each other and make sure that you're getting what you need. Both parties are getting what they need. I think the transparency is important. I think the reporting is important. And if we need to add some fields to our coding or something like that, I think it's important that the tribes have that information. So either way, I'd like to see that happen. So with that, we will now take a vote on the motion to send Senate Bill 241 to the 41st day. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Crabtree?
Aye.
Grove? No. Blanc?
Pass.
Davis?
Aye.
Hulse?
Aye.
Blanc?
Aye. Soft eye. That's my soft eye.
Hone?
No.
Peterson?
No.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas, 3 nays, 0 excused.
So with that, Senate Bill 241 is deferred to the 41st day.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is there a time frame in which you have to smoke something out from committee?
3 days from when the committee actions happen, but that might be different. 3 legislative days would be different as we approach crossover, and we're getting there. So Thursday, Friday, Monday, you could
Okay.
smoke it out. Double check with the pro tem, but I think you could smoke it out as late as Monday.
Okay, thank you.
So it's 3 days from when the committee report is read, and since we are in an afternoon committee, our report won't get read until tomorrow. So it would be technically Tuesday, but that's also crossover day. So it's going to be a hectic day that day. So I would suggest if you plan to do something like that, do it as soon as possible. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, with that, we will move on to SB 144. Do we have proponent testimony on SB 144?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead. Proponent
Members
testimony, Senate Bill
of the committee.
144.
Kurt Voigt, Senate 33. Horseshoe, Round Rapid City, Pennington County, and Meade. Thank you for your patience in giving me the opportunity to visit with you regarding 144. What you have before you is a relief regarding property taxes for seniors. The title says, property tax relief to certain senior owners, owner-occupied single-family dwellings. So it is very specific. If you'd lend me the latitude, I'd quickly run through the sections. Section 1 basic definitions. What's important there is that resident definition in terms of what a resident is when we're talking about in this bill that is proposed before you. It's an individual who has that domicile in the state and makes no claim of residency in another state or foreign country. And you'll become aware of why that's important here. Section 2 talks about what this is about in terms of who would qualify for consideration. There are basically 4 pieces in terms of that. Entitling an individual to receive property tax freeze on their owner-occupied single-family dwelling, okay? If the following considerations are in place: at least 65 years of age. They have owned their single-family dwelling at least 10 consecutive years, and they've been a resident in the state for 25 years. Have no delinquent real property taxes for any real property owned by the individual in the state of South Dakota. The last piece there is that the assessment freeze under this chapter limits the assessed value of the property in an assessment year to a value that's no greater than the assessed value of the property in either the assessment year the individual qualifies or the 2020 assessment year. So in essence, what that's saying, if the above qualify, property taxes are rolled back to 2020. They are froze there as long as that individual resides in that home. That, in essence, is what the bill is about. If you take a look at Section 3, it talks about how that is going to be managed. The application is forward to the Department of Revenue, and that makes the secretary there submit those forms to the county treasurers. Those treasurers then request an applicant or assist the applicant in completing the forms. What this does is it indicates it's a responsibility of that applicant to secure those forms from the secretary or the county treasurer. Section 4, county treasurer determines whether the applicant is eligible and whether the applicant's property is qualified. Verification there is what that is. The Director of Equalization maintains those records showing the value at which that property is frozen. In addition, the Director of Equalization reassesses that property in the same manner as all other property and keeps a record of that value. So there is a running tab of what the value of that property is if the consideration is changed. Section 5, timing here. Application needs to be approved by the county treasurer on or before April 1st. If that is the case, they're entitled to receive property tax assessment freeze for the next year, upcoming year. If that application is approved by the treasurer after the 1st of April, they're entitled to receive property tax assessment freeze for the following upcoming year. So that April 1st is an important timeline. If the individual receives that relief under the provisions of the chapter for any year, they're entitled to receive that property tax relief under this chapter for each subsequent tax year in which that individual owns that property. In other words, once they are accepted for this consideration, it is ongoing unless there is verification that they have violated that, no longer are they qualified. Prior to April 1st, that individual receiving that property tax freeze under the provisions of the chapter may receive notice of a change in circumstances to the county treasurer. In other words, if they don't want this consideration, it's their responsibility to notify that county treasurer. The the following year or year after until an application, they could reapply again. They need to notify the treasurer, county treasurer, if they are no longer want to be considered. With that, I would certainly be open to questions and conversation in terms of what this means.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes left of proponent testimony. Is there any further proponent testimony in the room?
I did have some schedule online, but I think with our change in schedule, I've lost them. I don't think there's anybody up, is there?
We don't see anybody online. Okay. Is there any opponent testimony in the room?
Let me get up.
If I didn't say it, we are limiting testimony to 10 minutes proponent, 10-minute opponent.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Allie Schaefbauer. I'm representing the Department of Revenue today. We rise in opposition to Senate Bill 144. Senate Bill 144 creates a brand new property tax relief program for certain seniors. While it has similarities to the existing property tax assessment freeze in Chapter 10.6a, it establishes an entirely separate framework. To qualify, an applicant must be 65 years old, have lived in that home for 10 consecutive years, have been a South Dakota resident for 25 years, and have no delinquent property taxes anywhere in the state. The first reason the department opposes this is because the bill is not providing targeted relief. The new assessment freeze would apply to any senior who meets these residency requirements, regardless of that person's need or financial reality. The assumption then is that age alone justifies this relief. The existing assessment freeze provides relief to people, including seniors, based on need. This protects the integrity of the property tax structure in our state and prevents people from avoiding their fair share. When a property tax exemption or reduction is created, that requires other members of the community to pay more in order to fill that bucket of the county budget. That would harm younger families, commercial properties, and agriculture in these same communities. Second, this bill may have unintended negative results. For example, because a senior under this plan would have to live in the home for 10 years, any move would lose that assessment freeze. So if a senior wanted to move, downsize into a smaller, single-level, safer home, they would then not qualify for that new assessment freeze for 10 years. In this scenario, the elderly person may choose to stay in that home that is too large or even unsafe, rather than move to a smaller, safer home, which then also keeps that home off the market and stagnates growth in the whole community. Another potential example, what if a married couple lives in a home together for 10 years, qualifies for this assessment freeze, but the home is only in the husband's name? There's nothing in this bill to address the surviving spouse question, who is now the owner of the home following the settling of the estate. Does she need to wait 10 years to receive this assessment freeze? The bill also specifically states that the treasurer's decision regarding an application for this freeze is final and then provides no clear avenue to challenge that determination. So there's due process questions on our end also. Finally, this bill creates administrative burdens for counties. The application demands proof of residency, but does not state what proof would be acceptable. Residency in South Dakota doesn't have any one definition and is notoriously tricky to nail down. Burdening the county treasurers to make a determination as to a person's legal residency without clear standards of what that means is unfair. And in the event a person challenges that determination in court, then counties are also going to be paying court costs to fight that. The requirement in the bill for treasurers to know if an applicant has any unpaid property taxes anywhere in the state would require that treasurer to call each of the 65 other counties, because there's no centralized property tax system in our state. The current assessment freeze in our state law provides targeted relief to individuals based on need and is a better, more targeted mechanism for property tax relief. Senate Bill 144 provides too broad of an exemption and has the potential to hamper growth in our communities. Senate Bill 144 moves the burden on property taxes onto the next generation of homeowners in South Dakota. For these reasons, the department asks for your no vote.
Thank you. Further opponent testimony to Senate Bill 144.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Matthew Bogue, registered lobbyist for South Dakota Farm Bureau. Just kind of a quick reminder, obviously we talked a lot about property taxes in this committee, but I like to use the analogy that property taxes is kind of like a glass of water. The need has to be filled one way or another. And really when looking at this bill, the question is then who recovers that lost property tax revenue that the senior citizens would no longer be paying. I think the Department of Revenue did a good job of explaining the targeted relief programs that are already in statute. And really also our concern is just within South Dakota Farm Bureau as an organization, we want to have South Dakota be a place that, individuals will come back and take over a family farm or move back to a rural community. Is it really good public policy to be giving relief to individuals who, regardless of need, now won't be paying those property taxes and put it on the backs of young working families who may have a mortgage, trying to take care of kids? All their expenses have also increased over the past couple of years, and we just don't think that this bill is really the necessary bill to be passed by this committee. Urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Further opponent testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nathan Sanderson, South Dakota Retailers Association. We're also rising in opposition to the bill. A few kind of high-level things. As Mr. Bogue mentioned, we've talked about property taxes in this committee a lot. I mean, basically every hearing that you've had here. We've started with 50 different ideas, and we're starting to winnow our way down. This approach is a huge divergence from any of the efforts that we've got right now. It is administratively burdensome. I can't imagine how all the counties are going to actually implement this thing. It creates all the problems that we've heard related to inequities in different assessments. You're going to see that same thing we've talked about in here before, where two identical homes on the same street are assessed differently simply based on the individual who lives there. You're going to reduce turnover. You're going to cause unintended consequences. We've got to start winnowing our way towards a solution. You guys moved one potential solution out today. You've moved another potential solution out before. We've got to start getting our arms around these kinds of things. This didn't go through the Legislative Summer Study Committee like 19 of the other proposals that have moved forward did. We'd strongly urge you to table this and then start working towards some solutions that we think we can actually get done this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Further opponent testimony. We have 3 minutes left. Any further opponent testimony? Any opponent testimony online? Okay, so seeing none, I will give the sponsor chance for rebuttal.
There now. Thanks, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Reflection in terms of what's been shared with you the last few minutes, if I could. Talked about burdensome to the administration of the bill. As is noted in there, there's not a request or requirement for the members of the community to submit as a group or preparation for them. This has to be an individual decision by that person that qualifies or thinks they qualify. It's no tougher than walking in and getting your driver's license. You've decided you want to get a license or approval. You walk in and ask for verification that these conditions exist. If they do, then the county treasurer proceeds to follow through. It's not a case where we're going to have to hire additional staff to manage this. That's not the case. If they do qualify, they notify that treasurer and they go through and follow through with the county in terms of consideration for that assessment of that property. It's an assessment of the property. It's not going to be a huge burden for the counties. It's not going to increase their staffing request. Change of ownership in terms of if you lose a spouse, I believe that's a legal question that can certainly be taken care of rather easily in terms of the transfer of property. If that's the case, and that spouse the widow or the single person left in that relationship continues to live there, all bets are on. But if that changes, there's going to be a change in there. Anytime they break that 10 consecutive years, it is off and it will have to start over again. It was mentioned as per a family. I would think a young member of a family coming on is not 65 years old. It's off. They don't qualify anymore. If that property doesn't qualify anymore, then it comes back on the tax rolls. It comes back on the tax rolls, and it is looked at in terms of its current assessed value. It goes back out in the community. The community is not going to lose that taxing capability permanently. They're going to continue with that taxing for property at the 220 level if you qualify. But once that is not in place anymore, it goes to the current appraised value. Whoever takes that. The most important piece of this bill is not just for the people that qualify. It's for those that are neighbors around them. I think you take a deep breath and you look at, we have visitors in this state. California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado. They visit and they like this state. They want to finish their lives here. They sell their home in California for $3 million. They come over here, they spend $1 million, and they have a nicer home than they have there, and now they have $2 million for capital investment. What happens is the appraised value, or what they paid for that property in that home, what happens to all the neighbors around them? Their property taxes go up because now their valuations of their property go up. This bill protects those people that qualify. So if you have someone come in, take a piece of property next to you with inflated prices, and you qualify here, all bets are off. You are froze at that level and protected. I think that's extremely important for those that have given their lives and their fortunes and wanted to settle and finish their lives in a respectful manner in this state. This protects those people. In terms of why this is being submitted, the property tax issue is a running gun issue. It is going on, from my naive perspective, for at least a year and a half. It doesn't see that's carrying any weight right now. How much longer are we going to run our residents who are seniors? They are the salt of the state. How long are we going to continue to run them out of their homes until we can make a decision in terms of what we need to do about property taxes? It bothers me to go to any box store and look at who's checking me out. And I ask them, why? Pay my property taxes, I have to go back to work. That's not good. It's not where it needs to be. Thank you,
Senator. With that, we will close testimony and open it up for committee questions.
Madam Chair.
Senator Grove.
Could I speak to either Wendy or Allie, please?
Go ahead, Senator Grove.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you explain to me, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but I'm trying to compare what we currently have in law and what this would do to put this in law. And I guess I don't know how that works, if it would, they would, anyway. So, because this is creating something new. So currently in law, if you are a resident, or if you live in your family dwelling for 3 consecutive years, or you're a resident for 5 years and you're 65, there is a program where you could, if you qualify financially, where you could get some kind of or is that sales tax? Is that for property tax? I was looking for property tax. Okay. Is that what that is? 10.6A? It exists for property tax? Okay.
Madam Chair? Yes. Allie Schaefbauer for the Department of Revenue. Yes, 10.6A is a property tax relief program.
So what do they get? It's not a freeze, it's just you get money off, or what does that look like?
Madam Chair? Yes. The current property tax assessment freeze, 10.6A, the valuation gets frozen, I think, when they apply for and qualify.
In the year they turn 65.
In the year they turn 65. Thank you, Wendy. The conditions for that is that the applicant has to be 65 years old or disabled. The assessment of the house has to be under $514,500, and then the income limit for a single person is $56,595, or for a multi-person home is $66,885.
Madam Chair?
Yes, follow up.
Okay, so their tax is frozen at whatever it is at 65 when they apply. If they meet the qualifications, then it is a tax freeze.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
It's an assessment freeze, so the assessment of the home is frozen.
Assessment freeze. Okay, thank you.
Follow up. Further questions from the committee? Senator Hone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the discussion was about burdensome and how that this will create more burden. Can you go over that as far as what you foresee?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
The burdens that we consider and are concerned about with this as relates to the county treasurers are the ones who are going to have to receive this application and go through the process of figuring out if this person on the application meets the requirements set in law, which is that 10-year residency, which my concern is that the standards of resident is not easy to prove, and this bill doesn't specify what those standards ought to be. So then the county treasurer has to make that legal determination. The county treasurer then also has to determine whether or not this person has owned the home for 10 years. And then with the proof of no delinquent property taxes, because there's no central system, there's no database they can just go to double check that, they're going to have to call every other treasurer of the 65 counties to determine that there's no outstanding property taxes for that applicant. Those are some of the burdens that we're concerned about, yes.
Follow up. Further questions from the committee? Quickly. Any further questions?
Madam Chair.
Senator Blanc.
For Ms. Schaefbauer? Is that your last name, Schaefbauer? Thank you for being here. Did I hear you correctly when you said that there are no proof of residency standards right now?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
There's a definition of residency in this bill, but it doesn't establish what proof is going to be required.
Madam Chair?
Follow up, go ahead.
I wasn't necessarily talking about in this bill. I'm just talking about, is there a proof of residency standard? I would think that there is.
Are you referring to a current statute?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Chair? I did a quick look yesterday, and I found 7 different statutes that talk about what residency in this state could be. This would be an 8th. There might be more. Like I said, it was quick research. There's also a legal South Dakota Supreme Court case decision going over the residency question and the fact that it's confusing, and that one standard in one statute doesn't apply to another standard of residency in another statute. That's the case of Lappin versus Zito Group, if you're interested. So to answer your question, I would say that it's confusing and it's not clear.
Very good. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, yes, I am interested. Can you email me those as well? I have another question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Senator Blanc.
Thank you. Do you believe that these people who the good senator is talking about, those people that are 65 plus who have constantly paid into our system for over 45 years probably, do you think that they're entitled to any property tax exemption? I know that there are some standards. I looked them up as well. There's deferral, that's 70 plus, but all that does is delay the payment until the house is sold. And like you said, meeting these standards is not always the easiest thing to do. So my question is do you think that there should be something, maybe if this isn't the bill, I'm not saying it's not, but if this isn't the bill, do you think that there is, that we should have some kind of an exemption?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. Senator Blanc, that's a good question, and honestly, I don't know that I'm the one to answer it. I do think, though, that all people in a community receive and are entitled to receive the same community benefits. The same ambulance is going to come. You drive on the same streets. And that's what our property tax system is for, is that everyone contributes because everyone receives. I know that's not exactly responsive to your question, but that's the best I can do.
Follow-up, Senator.
Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about those people that have paid into the system longer than some people have been alive that are doing. I want young people to get a break as well. I'm just thinking that those people that have served and paid into the system for that long deserve something. I have a quick question for the Prime, please.
Go ahead, Senator.
My question, Senator Voigt, thank you for being here, is, and I think that you touched on it briefly, can you just share why you desired to bring this bill to begin with?
Thank you, Senator Block. As I indicated before, it hit me hard when I was doing my shopping at Safeway, Runnings, Fleet Farm, the box stores, and I saw who was taking care of me. And those individuals that were doing that appeared to be at least my age. Not many more older, but the conversation turned to how long have you worked here, gas stations, whatever. And I didn't keep track, but I'm telling you, a very large number were seniors. And the comment was, we had a choice. We could either sell our home, take capital gains, and go live with 300 other people, or we'd go back to work.
Okay.
That's the choice for people that have spent their entire lives here.
Follow-up, Senator.
Gave me a bad taste. I don't like it. That's why I'm here in terms of this bill, to take care of those who have demonstrated a commitment to the state and given their lives to the state.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing no further questions, I'll open up to committee discussion and/or action. Senator Halls.
Madam Chair, I move to the 41st day.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 144 be deferred to the 41st day. Discussion on your motion.
Thank you. I commend the good senator for bringing this bill. Property taxes are obviously a huge issue, especially in our area in the Black Hills. And trust me, I have spent many hours of my short time on this earth as a younger person trying to solve the issue, especially for our elders that are experiencing this issue. And I think that while the point that our elders have been around for a longer period of time and therefore have paid into the system for a long time, and so therefore they are owed just something because their body has circled the earth for longer, it falls flat for me because you've also had the services for those years as well, whereas I wasn't even born yet, so I haven't had those services. You've had ambulance services for 50 years, so you paid for 50 years of services, whereas I've only paid for 20 years because I've only been alive for 20-something years. And I guess in areas like mine, while I am younger, Custer County and Fall River County, over 30% of the residents in those just two counties that I represent are 65 and up. So if we pass this bill, that would mean that pretty much 30% of the people are going to have their property tax bills frozen at 2020 values, or potentially even before that. And all of those property taxes are going to be dumped on to everyone else. And that's a lot of people in my area. And a lot of that evaluation is owned by people that are older. And so I don't necessarily feel like this is targeted relief, because just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean, and that you've lived here longer doesn't necessarily mean that you should get relief and everybody else shouldn't. I like the property tax bills that are giving working families, people that just bought their first home, and the elderly all property tax relief. And we have some of those in front of us. We voted on one earlier today that would give everyone relief equally, and that's why I'm a no vote on this.
Thank you. Further comments from the committee on the motion?
Madam Chair.
Senator Blanc.
Just for the record, the reason that I think that the amount of years of contributing to the system is valid is because that's going to, it creates an equal playing field. You know, being a younger gal, woman, will be able to take advantage of those same opportunities when you have been able to pay into the system or use the system. Just because you have used something doesn't mean that you haven't contributed more. The roads that we all drive on, that an 18-year-old drives on, are built on the backs of the people that have been paying property taxes for all of those years. So I think it has an equal playing field on that, because at some point you will be able to take advantage of that as well. So I just wanted to make that comment. But I appreciate everything that you had to say.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we will proceed to. Oh, did you have comments? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. We will proceed to the vote on Senate Bill 144. Those in favor of the motion to send to the 41st day say aye. Those opposed, no. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Crabtree, excused. Senator Grove,
Aye.
Blanc,
No.
Davis,
Aye.
Hulse,
Aye.
Hone,
Aye.
Peterson. Aye. Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 1 nay, 1 excused.
With that, Senate Bill 144 is sent to the 41st day. We will now take up SJR 506. We left that last time at committee questions. So if you will remember, SJR 506 is proposing and submitting to the voters at the next general election an amendment to the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, resetting, then limiting property taxes to a flat rate until adjusted when sold. So with that, I will open it up to committee questions.
Madam Chair, maybe I'm just missing. We deferred SB 243. Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I
Yes.
just wanted to confirm what we were doing. Thank you.
Any questions on SJR 506 from the committee? Go ahead. I'll let you find it. Go ahead. Find your notes from last time.
Madam Chair.
Senator Hulse.
There's an amendment out there on the bill that wasn't there when we had a hearing on it. How can I ask a question to the sponsor about what's going on with that amendment?
Yes, go ahead.
That's my question.
Mrs. Chair?
Yes, Senator Carly, go ahead.
Senator Carly, District 29. Senator Hulse?
My question is, Madam Chair, what's going on with the amendment that wasn't there when we heard this before?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Senator Hulse, that was 506A was a amendment to make it owner-occupied. So the original bill was helping owner-occupied ag and non-ag. And so this was made to make it more friendly for others so that they could support it. And this basically does it just for owner-occupied. And I think a lot of people have recognized that's where the greatest need is for owner-occupied. So I'd ask the committee to please move that amendment.
We can go ahead and move that when we get to discussion and our action, but thank you for the question. Any other questions for Senator Carly or others who may have testified on SJR 506?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess I would just ask if there's anyone, or if there is a representative from the opposition testimony in the room that would be willing to give maybe 2 less than 90 seconds worth of just thoughts on said amendment, if it is going to only be for owner occupied. I think, Wendy, that'd be great if you would just give some. I don't know if you've seen the amendment. I know I just saw it when I pulled up the bill, so.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Wendy Semler, Department of Revenue, Property Tax Division. So I haven't read it, so that was the first I heard of it as well. Our issues would remain the same. It would still create, the financial instability for the local governments regarding the fact that the property tax bills would be still limited to 1 or 2%. It would still shift the tax relief. It would create inequities. So our overall issues remain the same, or our own overall concerns remain the same.
Thank you. Further questions from the committee?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Grove.
Could you, I did not hear what you said at the very end. If you could just repeat that. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
So, yes, Madam Chair, Wendy Semler. So it would still create property tax shifts and inequality amongst owner-occupied properties. Then the tax burden would be uneven amongst the owner-occupied. And then if there was any other shifting amongst the ag and non-ag, that's where I would have to kind of do a little bit more looking at that, but it would for sure create inequality amongst owner-occupied. Then it would just be shifting things for sure amongst them.
Further questions? Senator Rowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the prime. So the concern is that local governments wouldn't be able to reliably budget, and that freezing these property taxes, it'd be hard for the budgets to grow, and then the tax shift. Can you address those?
Senator Carley, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Hahn. Yeah, so there is actually no change compared to what it is now. I mean, the term unequal, well, you can ask your neighbors, and their property tax amount is different than yours now anyway. All this does is freeze it at what the level was already at. So there's no new inequality established because we're freezing it at values that have already been established. And those values are either 2020 or the year that it was sold, if it was 21 or 22, 23, 24. Secondly, this property tax plan provides a substantial amount of the original budgeting in it. So that's probably one difference between a lot of plans, is that it actually is making this owner-occupied reset and flat, but it keeps, as I presented last week, it keeps literally about 90% in there. And in fact, that number goes up now that we amended it to just be owner-occupied. So because we're not doing this to ag or owner-occupied or commercial, even less is out of the system. And then finally, just as far as budgets are concerned, finding new money, that's why I did put the 1% and the 2% in there. So when homes are sold at the market rate, that 1% or 2% is calculated. So that will create good new revenue for the system, because I think I heard early in a testimony, if someone comes in, pays a whole lot for a home, the great news is that they know up front what they're going to pay, but they're also willing to pay that additional property tax amount willingly in this case, and they know what it's going to be. So that's going to inject quite a bit of new revenue into the system.
Follow up, Senator Hohn.
Yep.
Further questions from the committee? Senator Davis.
Question for Mr. Sanderson from the retailers. Can you remind me what was the opposition from your standpoint?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question, Senator Davis. So to sort of reset on this thing, this is a Senate joint resolution. This isn't a statutory change. So we're talking about changing South Dakota's constitution, and we're talking about fundamentally changing our property tax structure in South Dakota to align that to a system that's much more closely aligned with California's. What we're doing is we are freezing property tax assessments and only allowing incremental increases for a subsection of our property tax payers. And so we've talked about this before. You're going to create inequities between properties on the same street. You're talking about having a totally different approach to property taxes than what this state has had in the past, and we did it with an amendment that hasn't even had a full hearing on it. I would submit to you that that is not the way to amend the Constitution. That'd be one of the reasons why we're opposed.
Further committee questions? Seeing none, I'll open up to committee discussion and/or action. And if I might recommend, could we move that amendment so that gets put on the bill?
Madam Chair, I move amendment 506A.
Second.
It's been moved by Senator Hull, seconded by Senator Grove, to put the amendment on Amendment 506A. If there, if those in favor would say aye and those opposed nay. Oh, okay, great. Okay, so those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Okay, so 506A is applied to the joint resolution. So further discussion and/or action.
Madam Chair,
Senator Davis.
I would move SJR 506 to the 41st day.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that SJR 506A go to the 41st day. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Comments on the motion. It's late.
That's all right. I'll be brief, just for the sake of efficiency here. I think this leaves more questions and more concerns. We're amending the Constitution. I don't feel great about that right now. So that's why I made the motion. I think we've got other solutions that would be more flexible for us to consider and actually delivering relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Crabtree, excused. Senator Grove.
Aye.
Blanc.
No.
Davis.
Aye.
Hulse.
No.
Hone.
Aye.
Peterson.
No.
Madam Secretary, you have 3 yeas, 3 nays, 1 excused.
So with that, the motion fails. I think since we are down at least one committee member, we'll just need to wait to vote on this, then have to defer this till Friday, our next meeting, and we'll vote on it when we have a full committee. Okay, with that, okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Just kidding. Motion carries.
SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.